Hey, what's up guys? Welcome to the channel. Today I am going to show you how we recreate the movie poster for Split. Hey guys, my name is Ryan Sims. Welcome to the channel. We're going to talk about photography, we're going to talk about lighting, behind the scenes, Photoshop, all that good stuff, so stay tuned. It's probably going to be a bumpy ride. Let's get to it. All right, so if we take a look at this image that we're doing of Split, you can tell by looking at the image, you've got this nice straight on shot of James McAvoy here. It looks like it's kind of close to Rembrandt lighting, which, you know, you kind of see this little patch on his left cheek, which are, you know, stage right, stage left. His left cheek, you know, when we look at him, it's his right cheek. But you get that little patch of light going through. That's what we call Rembrandt lighting. And it's usually really dramatic lighting. It's a very popular style of photography. I think it always works. I use it a lot. I like to use it. So that's what we're going to go for. We're going to go for that Rembrandt lighting, kind of getting the main light in the top corner of the eye, as you see it here in the poster. And right there at 10 o'clock, let's do this. Let's try to mimic this lighting. So I've got my Policy Buff Einstein E640 unit with a 35-inch softbox and my white diffusion fabric here. I've got my modeling light on so you can kind of see already the lighting effect that it's trying to do on me. You can. I can't see it right now because I'm in front of the camera, but that's neither here nor there. I've got my remote trigger and I'm going to take a couple of selfies here and we're going to do this. Get my sinister look on. I think that'll work. So let's take it into Photoshop and show you what we do next. So here we are in Photoshop and I have picked out my favorite image. You can see my fun looking face here. It's a great expression, Ryan. So I'm going to go ahead and do some high frequency separation retouching so we can go ahead and get into the next part. All right, so now that we got that stage done, I'm going to go here. This is the image that we're going based off of here, the Split movie poster. And so just looking at it, I see we've got the face kind of cut off right here by this left eye and kind of got this rule of thirds situation going on. So let's go ahead and mimic that. First thing I'm going to do, I'm going to go back to my image. I went ahead and merged all my layers together. So this is the layer that we're working on. So I can either crop it or I can blow it up. Either one will work fine. I think what I'm going to do, so I'm just going to take this layer. First of all, I'm going to flip it so the lighting matches. So I'm just going to go to Edit, Transform, Flip Horizontal. There we go. Because I want this little light patch right here in the corner. So if I take this image and just bring it up like this. All right, and so if we notice in this background, he's got a white background. I shot mine on a gray background, so I'm just going to go ahead and cut myself out and make this background white. And I may even cut some of my shoulder off and make me look a little bit skinnier, so there's a lot more white space than there currently is. And so yeah, so what I'm going to do is on my face layer, I'm going to grab my pen tool and just start cutting myself out. I'm going to start down here. And right here, I'm just going to kind of cut on the outside of my hairs because in a second, I'm going to use the Refine Edge tool to get some of those individual hairs. And I'll show you how to do that. And I'm just going to put that feather radius, we'll just say it 2 for right now. And I'm going to hit Control-Shift-I to invert that selection. I'm going to go right down to this mask tool over on the bottom right and hold down the Alt key and click this button so it masks out that background. And just for my eyes' sake, I'm just going to go ahead and put white background, make a new layer there. And with my paint bucket, I'm going to fill it with white. Click right here, so it's a white background. All right, now I'm going to select my face layer mask. I'm going to zoom in here. I don't like how this is quite so clean, so one thing I'm going to do So I'm going to go down to select mask, and just kind of play with the feathered edge a little bit, maybe a little bit of smoothness, you know, shift edge, things like that, and hit OK. That way I just kind of see it's a subtle difference. And what I'm going to do now for this hair, I'm going to select my mask, go to select a mask, and then select the refine edge tool, and I want to select it to where you can actually see what's going on here on this onion skin layer, and select the gray and just start painting it out. And once we do that, we can hit OK, and now we see we've got individual hairs that have been masked out. This edge right here is a little bit too sharp for me, so I am going to actually blur it a little bit more. And there's several ways you can do this, but I think the way I'm going to do it is with this mask selected. I am going to hit my brush tool, hit our Q hotkey to bring up our quick selection mask, and at 100%, I am going to paint in just this collar area. It's going to bring up this red selection, and I'm just going along the edge of my collar here and down into the shoulder. What I'm going to do once I do that is hit Q again, and you see it's got everything but what I painted selected, so I'm going to hit Control Shift I to invert it so it just selects what I was painting a second ago. Make sure that the mask here is selected, and I'm going to go over to Filter, Blur, and we can go to Gaussian Blur, just select the amount that we want to blur it. 5 sounds pretty good. I'm going to hit OK, Control D to deselect, and I'm just going to move around and look at it. See, this was before and this was after. I like that. All right, so now that we've done that, I am going to create a new layer and call it DB for Dodge and Burn. Set that to Overlay. Go to Fill with Overlay Neutral Color 50% Gray. Click that and hit OK. And I'm going to start doing some dodging and burning with our dodging and burn tool over here. With our mid-tone selected in the range and exposure roughly 2 or 3%, I'm going to select my dodge and burn tool and just start doing some dodging and burning. All right, and now that we've done that, I'm probably going to take this dodge and burn layer and decrease the opacity on it just a little bit, maybe around 60% or so. That way it's just more of a subtle difference and not quite so strong. And the next step I'm going to do, I'm going to add a certain color tone to this. It looks like in this shot that there's a couple of bluish tones in there, as well as a little bit more strong contrast. So let's see, maybe the first thing I might do is create a levels layer, play around with some of the blacks and the whites. And once we've done that, create selective color layer. And let's see, we're gonna start playing around with some of these different tones here. I'm gonna bring the whites up a little bit more so that these highlights seem to be a little bit more strong. And from here, I'm going to play with some of the color lookups. Let's see, let's go, might do a bleach bypass, decrease the power pretty good bit, maybe down to like 10%, 12%, something like that. We're going to select another one, and let's see, film stock, I'm going to bring it down to 10% as well, and foggy night. And bring that down to about 10%, see what that looks like. Skin tones look a little bit warmer, so I'm going to go over to my selective color and select some of the skin tones like yellow and red and play around with some of those. And I think overall this image looks really good if it's desaturated a little bit. So I'm going to go to hue and saturation and decrease the saturation slightly, maybe about at the most negative 20%. I'm just going to group all these layers together. I'm just going to hold down the shift key and select down to selective color, hit Control G to make a group, and I'm just going to call those groups tones. Tones, color, whatever you want to call it. LUTs. And now that we've done that, I think I want to make the detail in the eye pop out a little bit more. And there's several different ways that we could do this. One way is by sharpening, one way is by maybe using an overlay layer. I think I might do a little bit of both. I'm going to hold down Control Shift Alt E to stamp everything. And I'm just going to label this I Detail. And with that, I'm going to go over to Filter, Other, High Pass. And I'm going to play around with this high pass filter to where I can see a little bit more detail in the eye. I might go up to, say, 15% there, maybe 20. Let's do 20. Hit OK, and then I'm going to go over to my blending modes, change that over to overlay, and then I'm going to hold the Alt key down when I press on this mask to hide this layer, and zoom into the eye, and with a white brush paint some of this effect back in. So you can see if you do the before and after, there's just a little bit more detail in that eye now. If you want to, you can hit Control J to duplicate that layer and have it increased even more. And I might create another new layer and just call it HL for highlights. Go to overlay, hit OK, and with a white brush, really lightly, probably like at 1 or 2%, just paint over some of these highlights to make them pop even more than they are. Almost as like a glistening effect to some of the highlights. And if it looks like it's too much, I can always just hit E for eraser and erase some of that effect out. And I think now that I've got this part done, I'm going to add a little bit more grit and sharpness to it. So one thing I might do is I might hit Control Shift Alt E again. We'll just call this Skin Detail. And I'm going to go over to Filter, Other, High Pass, and maybe go down to, let's see, 2 or 3%. Let's do 4%. Hit OK. And then with that layer selected, go down to Overlay. And if we kind of zoom in a little bit and just see what it's like without it, just adds a little bit more sharpening effect to the image. All right, so now that we've done that, I'm going to stamp everything one last time. Control Shift Alt E, stamp the image. So this is going to be the image that we're going to work with as we start adding in this split effect. So now I'm going to pull up my broken glass image and drag it in and resize it as needed. All right, so there's several different ways I'm sure we could do this, but I'm going to do it this way. I'm going to rename this layer Broken Glass, and I'm going to change this to the blending mode exclusion. And now that we've changed it, you can see the colors are different here. But what I'm going to do to fix that is I'm just going to create a black and white layer and clip it by checking this button right here to the broken glass layer. And as you can see, it kind of takes it and just makes it look like it's one consistent color. So we're going to make our split movie poster a little bit different from the actual movie poster. We're going to add some dimensions to these shattered layers. And one way we're going to do that is we're going to go over here to this Paths panel and go to this Work Path area right here. And one thing I'm going to do is I'm going to start making out different paths for all these different shattered pieces of glass. And I'll show you what I mean. Let's zoom in. And then let's hit our P hotkey for bringing up the pen tool. And I'm just going to start up here and start basically tracing along this path right here. And once we've done that, I'm going to double click on this work path layer and just name it Path 1 and hit OK. And the next thing we're going to do is we're just going to click out of that and start making another path layer. So we can start clicking, say, in this little shard of glass here. We can start here. And it's automatically going to create a new work path layer for us. And so I'm just going to click out through here. All right. Double click in here, name it path 2, hit OK, then click out, and we're just going to keep doing this step until we've gotten all the shattered layers that we want to use. All right, so I've made probably 9 different layer paths right now. And so what that means is I'm going to go back over to my layers panel, and I'm going to make sure that I have 9 different layers of this final image. So I'm going to go ahead and hit Control J 8 more times. All right, now that we've made all of our copies, what I'm going to do is I'm going to rearrange these in order and just rename them Final Image 1, Final Image 2, Final Image 3, and so forth. So once we've done all that, we should have something that looks kind of like this. We've got 1 on top all the way down to 9 on bottom. And with the top one selected, I can hold the Shift key, go down to 9, select those, hit Control G, make it into a group, and then just select those and name it whatever you want. Faces. All right. So what I'm going to do with these images is I'm going to go over to my Paths panel, and I'm going to click on the first path, Path 1. I'm going to hold the Control key, click into this area right here, so it gives us our selection. And I might hold Control Shift I to invert it, and then go over to Layers. And with that final image selected, I'm going to click this Mask tool right here. So it's going to mask it out and unclick this little link here, and with the image selected, I can now move this image around inside this area, and it's really only the top left area that I'm wanting to move, so I'm just going to move it over a little bit. It's not a huge difference, but we'll start seeing the difference as we go through. We'll use the next image as an example. So if we go to Path 2, hold Control, click on that, we've got this next little portion selected, hit Control Shift I to invert it, so you make sure you have just the shard of glass selected. And I'm going to go to my image 2 and click the mask tool, uncheck this area right here, and make sure you're selected on the image itself. If you need to hit Control T to select the image, then do that. Then you can move it around with inside that space. So you can move it a little bit, maybe make it slightly bigger, slightly smaller, just to give it a little bit of a displacement. And that way it kind of lets us know that we're dealing with broken shards of glass here. And let's do one more as an example. We'll do the image 3. Go to Path 3, Control click in that area, Control Shift I to invert, so you make sure you're getting your selection just on your shard of glass. And then with the final image 3 selected, we're going to click on this mask here, uncheck this little link, and with the image itself selected, we're going to move it around just a little bit like that right there. So here we get to have a little bit of fun and do a couple of different things. So I might make it a little bit bigger, slide it down some. I don't want to move it too much. I don't want it to look super weird. Still kind of in the same area where it was, just slightly different. So maybe a little above, a little below the eye, things like that. And then from there, we can just kind of start having fun with it. And one thing I may do as well to this image, I kind of like some of the, I guess, debris and scratches that you see on the image, but if it's something you want to take out of, we can actually go to our broken glass layer and put a mask on it by clicking the mask at the bottom right. And with a black brush, we could start painting some of this destruction out of the glass. Kind of like this right here, just to make it look a little bit cleaner, if that's something you want to do. I kind of like it, so I'm probably going to leave some of it in. And that, my friends, is how we recreate the movie poster for Split. Hey everyone, thanks for watching this video. Please make sure that you like, subscribe, and share this video with your friends. Don't forget to hit the notification button so you can stay up to date on all of my latest videos. Be sure to leave a comment on what you'd like to see me work on next. Hope to see you guys next time, and again, thanks for watching. Hey! Split. Be sure to have a comment. Leave a comment. Hey, what's up? And I'm going to take a couple of selfies here, and we're going to do this. Get my sinister look on. If it'll work. What's up, man? I'm just taking some selfies real quick before I'm warming up before I... Oh, no, you're good. Be sure that you had leave. Let me write that in. Man, leave a comment.